I was a little sick in the MTC, and I had taken NyQuil the night before, which is kind of a bad idea. I was out that night, and so I woke up late. Woke up with my travel buddy late, and so we had to scramble to get everything together. It wasn't too big of a deal, but we were a little sad because we wanted to we actually wanted to take a really warm shower for a long time before we actually left, because we had heard that there weren't going to be any warm showers anymore, and so we wanted to say goodbye. Anyway, so we got up. We were getting to the airport and everything, and got on the plane. It was great. I was really excited to see when we got into the terminal at Dallas. We had a layover in Dallas. When we got there, I was really excited to see the McDonald's arches. That was something I hadn't seen in a long time. The MTC food is great, but sometimes you miss a Big Mac every once in a while. So I got to chow down on one of those. And what I didn't realize was that once we had gotten on the plane from Dallas to El Salvador, they were going to serve a meal. And so I was already full from, my lunch and from my layover. And so, but I was just like, oh, hey, free meal on a plane. It was pretty cool. So I decided, I'd eat it again. And so I was decently full once we arrived in El Salvador. Of course, it was raining. We actually were getting there at the kind of end of the rainy season. And so let's see, we arrived there in September, so it was like that tail end. And so we, get off the plane, and people had told me like the humidity was gonna, hit you, and it was gonna be really humid, you're gonna be sweaty. And so I got off, we were in the terminal, and I was just like, it's a little humid, but not bad. I mean, they were just, being wimps or whatever, that was my thought process. And so, we got our bags, and I remember being incredibly nervous, because once we got to immigration, I was just like, these people, they aren't going to speak any English. I'm not very good at my Spanish. I was a little nervous, to talk to them. And so once we got up to the desk, we handed them our passports, and I just was like, I was at a loss for words. I didn't know what to say. And she just, she kind of looked at me and, just checking my picture and everything, and gave me a stamp. And I believe we had to pay some kind of transaction fee. And I think I remember her saying $10 in Spanish or something like that. And I barely caught it. I almost didn't catch it. And so I was just, scrambling. And, I was really relieved, to get past that, whew, smooth sailing, immigration. And there was at the end of immigration, they had a random search like box that you had to go through, and it had a red light and a green light. And so it had a green light, you were fine. Once it got a red light, then they just randomly search you, And I was like, as I was standing in line, I was just like, I don't want to get a red light. Please don't get a red light. No red light, I was very nervous about that. And so I get up there, and I understood. I was surprised, because I understood what the security officer running the booth, he was just like, what group are you guys with? And I understood what he said, and I started getting really excited. I was just like, oh, look, here's my first experience. I'm going to share the gospel with this guy, that doesn't know who we are. And I couldn't, because, I didn't really know the words. And I was just like, okay, we are, I started, fumbling in Spanish to say it. But before I had realized it, I, had gotten the green light, and I was getting shuffled through. And then I was like, oh, I wish I would have gotten the red light. I would have been able to talk to him. Oh, hopefully talk to him. And so that was an interesting experience, getting off the plane. And we were supposed to go out the doors, and they were automatic doors. And so we were just walking out, and the automatic doors just opened, and there it was, just, the humidity. And I was just like, I knew exactly what they were talking about then. I was just, you were just hit with it, and then you just immediately started to sweat. And we're all in our suits here, and I'm thrilled to be there. I'm really excited to be there, but I'm like sweating like a dog here. And so that was definitely interesting. Our mission president and his wife were there to welcome us and everything. So, we got all settled in, and I couldn't believe how hot it was. And so I was really excited, and I wanted to take a picture. So I got with my travel buddy, and we took a picture. And so I have a picture of that moment when you know, I had just gotten off. I was really excited. You can just kind of see like the excitement in our faces, but also, you know, just we're all like wet, just drenched with sweat. And so that's one thing about El Salvador, is that you'll always be sweating. You'll constantly be sweating. The only time I really wasn't was maybe in the middle of the night, early in the morning. That's probably when you weren't sweating because you weren't really doing anything. So, but that was, you know, that was one of my favorite experiences, was actually getting here. So once we got settled in, we went to the mission home, and keep in mind, I'm pretty full from, you know, my 2 meals, and we get to the mission home, and, you know, lo and behold, there's this giant feast that, you know, the mission president's wife has prepared for us. And so I'm just like, oh, this is great. So I get some food, and I sit down to eat, and I realize that I'm incredibly full. I've had enough. And I didn't want to be rude or anything, because in that culture, if you know, reject food for whatever reason, it's a little offensive. Like, they're very gracious, you know, they'll give you food, and it's very kind of them. And so sorry, I have an itchy nose. Oh. And so that ideal is just, you know, just like a commonality, just out of common courtesy. And so, you know, I was eating, you know, I didn't know my mission president's wife very well, so I was just trying to be very gracious, and I was just thinking in my head, just like, I don't know how much more I can take. And so I started eating, and I finished the meal, and I was just, okay, I'm good. And then after the meal, the mission president's wife, she brought out what are called pupusas. Pupusas are a common dish in El Salvador. You'll get very used to them. You'll love them, which are basically these just, simply put, they're tortillas. And they make these tortillas a little thick, and they stuff pretty much whatever you want in there. The most common one is, like, you know, beans and cheese, or sometimes they put what's called chicharron in them, which is basically kind of like a seasoned pork, and they put in there. We could never eat that one because we couldn't eat pork, but I can get to that later. And then sometimes just cheese. Anyway, the mission president's wife had made some. She was originally from Guatemala, so she had learned to make them. And she brought them out, and I really wanted to try them. I really did. But I was like, if I eat any more, something bad might happen. So, you know, I kept from eating those. And I managed, you know, everything was great. And so that was definitely a fun experience, because, you know, I couldn't focus on anything, because I was just trying to just shovel down this food without, you know, having any complaints or any problems or anything like that. So that was kind of a funny experience that I had my first few hours of the mission. So